Lots of people ride motorcycles. Cops ride motorcycles. But the Warlocks and other outlaw motorcycle gangs sometimes harbor dangerous criminals, even murderers. Robert Thomas Noss was one of these. Before we share the facts of this case, we must warn you. Parental discretion is advised. They roam across the country, a cancer on the American highway. The outlaw biker gangs. They may think of themselves as leather-bound road warriors in some high-octane dream. But in reality, they include some of America's most violent criminals, experts in extortion, kidnapping, drugs, murder.
They cherish calling themselves the one percenters. And the one percenters is just that, the 1% of those individuals who own motorcycles in this country who are outlaw motorcycle enthusiasts.
Robert Bobby Noss was vice president of one of these outlaw biker gangs, the Warlocks. In the 1970s, over 150 Warlocks roamed the mid-Atlantic states.
The Warlocks are probably the most vicious individuals that I've ever encountered in my 20 years as a state policeman.
Noss grew up in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, a hard-scrabble neighborhood on the edge of western Philadelphia. At 19, he was already a hardcore biker. The scars of those years are recorded in his tattoos. The most prominent, a large blue parrot on his upper right arm.
Robert Noss presents a clear danger to the community, a proven danger. He has killed and has committed other crimes. In fact, has been convicted of robbery, rape, drug trafficking, as well as homicide.
And this is the woman he killed, Elizabeth Ann Landy, a petite blonde beauty queen who fell in with the Warlocks after leaving high school. This photo was taken by her parents on December 10th, 1971. The next evening she disappeared after a date with her longtime boyfriend, Bobby Noss.
Something else going on. You watch these stupid old movies every night.
They had spent the evening watching television and taking drugs at the home of a fellow biker in Fulcroft, Pennsylvania. Sometime that night, Liz Landy playfully kicked Robert Noss over the edge. Choked Landy to death, or so he thought. Somehow, some way, 15 minutes later, she regained consciousness. She ran to the bathroom, locking herself in. Noss ordered her to come out.
Well, I didn't mean it.
Robert Noss made love to the woman he'd nearly killed minutes earlier, but their reconciliation was brief.
I'm leaving you.
What for?
Because you hit me.
I didn't.
This time, Noss knew Landy was dead and told a friend, and we quote, "She won't bother me anymore." When morning came, Noss coerced neighbor William Standen to help dispose of Landy's nude body. The men drove to this garage on 2nd Street in Upper Darby, where John Weir testified that he had burned Landy's clothes and pocketbook. According to Standon's testimony, he and Noss then drove to a woods outside Atco, New Jersey. Somewhere in that forest, Noss dug a shallow grave and buried Elizabeth Ann Landy. Her body was never found. A week after the murder, Bobby Noss received a Christmas card from his now-dead girlfriend. It was mailed before she was beaten and hanged, and it was affectionately signed, "Love, Liz." For the first time in the history of the state of Pennsylvania, a man had been convicted of first-degree murder without a body or an eyewitness as evidence. Robert Noss was sentenced to life in prison, here at the State Correctional Institution at Graterford, Pennsylvania. He spent much of the next 4 years working in the prison woodshop. But if they thought Robert Noss was here to stay, they were wrong. On November 15th, 1983, Noss and fellow inmate Hans Vorhauer put the finishing touches on a large wooden cabinet they'd built. Furniture made by the inmates was often stored in the adjacent warehouse while waiting to be sold to the public. At 8:30 in the morning 2 days later, both men reported to their jobs in the prison woodshop. During a routine cell block check 8 hours later, both Noss and Vorhauer were missing.
On the day of the escape, a male and female arrived at the institution in a rental truck, identified themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, to pick up a piece of furniture. The furniture was wheeled out from the greenhouse to the parking lot where it was loaded onto the truck and taken away from the institution. Inside that piece of furniture were hidden Mr. Noss and Mr. Vorhauer.
This forensic bust of Robert Noss holds some clues. We'll share them with you, and we'll meet one of the U.S. Marshals pursuing Bobby Noss when America's Most Wanted continues. Stay with us. When Bobby Noss was at Monsignor Bonner High School in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, Thomas Rapone was a student there. When Bobby Noss served time at a Pennsylvania prison, Rapone was the warden. Now Tom is a U.S. Marshal, and one of his primary tasks is to capture Bobby Noss. Marshal Rapone, is this what Bobby Noss looks like today?
Yes, it is, and quite different than what we believe or most people think a motorcycle type would look like. As you can see, Mr. Noss today is very average looking. Clean cut, short hair.
He'd fit right into today's society.
Absolutely.
Can you point out any distinguishing marks for us?
Yes, some real distinguishing characteristics Mr. Noss has. A slant downward, the outside of his eye, which is unique, according to our forensic people. Very small, unobtrusive chin. Muscular neck, neck muscles developed by his particular walk, his gait. His ears, very close to the jawline. It follows one straight line around his jaw.
What about a beard or a mustache?
Noss, at different times, has had a very short, small goatee and mustache. He had a problem with hair growth on the side of his cheeks. Never completely had a full beard. Different photographs and information given to us always show him with a small goatee and mustache, never a full beard.
Now, if he's looking for work or he's taken a job, what kind of work would he do?
Typically, Noss was a mechanic, worked on automobiles, did a lot of radiator repair work, motorcycle repair work, some detail work, pinstriping, but work all related around the automobile and motorcycle areas.
Well, from the reconstruction we've seen, it appears that Bobby Noss has great difficulty in establishing relationships with women.
This seems to have been a problem that Noss has had for many years. Almost every one of our interviews, individuals we talked to during this investigation have indicated Noss had a problem, a love-hate psychological problem with most women that he dealt with. He would love them one moment and beat them the next.
Any news on the escape?
Yes, the escape, of course, since the capture of his co-conspirator during the escape, we've learned that the Thompsons are not really the Thompsons. They were a couple associated with Noss who helped him effect the escape.
Robert Thomas Noss Jr. is 35 years old. He's 5'9" and weighs about 190 pounds. He's got brown hair and eyes and several tattoos. We've already shown you the blue parrot tattoo on his right bicep. He also has a tattoo of 3 skulls on his right forearm, a girl and a swastika on his left forearm, and on his upper left arm, a skull with a dagger and the phrase, "Born to Lose." If you know something about Robert Noss or where he might be, call our toll-free hotline, 1-800-CRIME-88. Your tips will immediately be turned over to the U.S. Marshals Service. Thank you, Marshal Rapone.
You just watched the second episode of America's Most Wanted. The episode aired on Valentine's Day 1988, a little better than 16 years after Bobby Noss killed Liz Landy. More than 4 years after the convicted drug dealer, rapist, and murderer escaped from Graterford Prison. And yes, he was still a fugitive from justice when this episode aired. And it looks like Blondie's with us here today. But first, a great big thank you to Mike Dunlap for posting this video on my Facebook page yesterday. And I'll read the caption. From my hometown of Folcroft, and the killing took place in the garage, it was attached to my sister's first apartment. I happen to know an expert on this subject, who is also from my hometown, who wrote one of the best crime dramas I have ever read, and in one night at that, Born to be Wild author Barry Bowe. I know this video looks familiar to you, Barry. Thanks again, Mike. Yep, sure does. Haven't seen it in years, and it does bring back memories. And doing the research for Born to be Wild, I spent 2 days with John Walsh at America's Most Wanted headquarters in Washington, D.C., took a train up to Boston, spent a day with Tom Rapone, spoke with Troopers Bobby Klein and Bill Davis several times. This video gives you a pretty good idea of how Bobby Noss killed Liz Landy, but this is just a few hours in a story that takes 20 years to play out in real life from beginning to end. Born to be Wild fills in what happened on that tragic night, what led up to it, and a whole lot more. And this story may or may not be over yet. More about that later. If you're interested in the preview of the book, just go to Google and type Born to be Wild, Barry, and it pops up on Amazon. Thanks for stopping in today. Until next time. See you. And that's a wrap.